Thank you very much. Listening to that, John McTernan, who was Tony Blair's Director of Political Operations for a couple of years back in the day, still very much a commentator on Labour and Labour policies. Good morning, Mr McTernan.
Good morning.
What do you make of what you've just heard from Alan Brett? Do you think he's right that actually Labour could have won if they'd not messed it up?
Labour definitely messed up the selection, but Labour rushed the selection because of a concern about whether George Galloway could gain momentum in the constituency. So it's understandable why Labour rushed at it. And the thing is, I think, a stunning result for George himself. It's a record, I think, isn't it, to be re-elected? He's elected for the fourth time for three different parties. But the point is, it's a message to all political parties. The Tories are nowhere. There's clearly a desire in Rochdale for change. I think lots of people have said this on this day programme. There's a mood for change in the country, change from the Tories. The question is, can Labour be the change people wish to go to?
And George Galloway saying very clearly that they're not going to be, and that he is going to now tackle them, challenge them in plenty more constituencies. How seriously do you take that? Should Labour take that?
I think Labour should take this incredibly seriously. There aren't 100 Georges. There aren't George Galloways. There are not even 3, 4, 5, 6. The issue, though, is this was a judgment in some way on last week's Parliament, the lack of the ability of the UK Parliament to come to a position that most people in Britain believe about Israel-Gaza, that there should be an immediate ceasefire, humanitarian ceasefire, there should be an end to the killings in Gaza. This is an expression of that. That's a force in British politics that nobody in the Parliament is able to channel properly.
So do you think that Labour should essentially fall in then with what the SNP's position is, that as an immediate ceasefire, and they of course had that motion, is that where Labour, do you think, is now heading?
No, see, the SNP were trying to play politics. I think this election result is all about condemnation of people playing politics and not actually doing anything about the humanitarian crisis. The SNP they had a motion which they knew Labour couldn't support. They did that deliberately for their purposes in Scotland. This is the issue, I think, around the politics. George Galloway ran on two different things. One was on Gaza. The other one is, on his last leaflets, he's committed to securing a Primark in Rochdale. Something about this goes to the neglect of Rochdale, the decay of the cities around Manchester. Manchester is booming. Got Greater Manchester, bits of it aren't booming. There's a whole complex of politics here. And the thing is, this feels like the first mid-term by-election of a Starmer government, because in a funny kind of way, for the last 18 months, the assumption has been that Starmer is going to be the Prime Minister. And in a sense, all politics is about the Labour Party. All of your questions are really, how will Labour fund this? How will Labour be changed?
Yeah.
The politics that we've got on a caretaker government, but all the politics.
But that's interesting. So here's the question then, John, arising from that. Do you think Rishi Sunak looks at this, with your wider political experience of all of these things, does Rishi Sunak look at this and think, well, actually, do you know, maybe an earlier election is a better thing now, because the Keir Starmer is never going to be as vulnerable as he might be now?
Look, I think that would be the only reason to call an early election. The polls make Rishi look vulnerable, but the Labour Party look as though there's this huge issue which they have been unable to answer, which is it's not just in Labour's voters, younger voters, as well as Muslim voters. It's something in the country that is demanding it. All the top stories I was listening to in the news just now, they're all geopolitical. Everything at the moment is about geopolitics. And that's not come into our politics in the Parliament. It's not there in our campaign. It's not there in what Sunak is offering. Right. Something needs to give and to shift. So Labour does need to. And Labour's come out punching against George Galloway, focusing on division, the way he's focused on that, in his aim is to do that in other seats across the country. But there's a real fundamental issue in here. Political problems are solved by political responses.
Right, we've got to leave it there. John McTernan, thank you very much for talking to us this morning.
17 minutes past 7.